Hello, everyone. Today we have Sasha and David from Magic and the Noise. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello, thank you for having us. We're happy to be here.
I was so incredibly impressed by the work that you have up on your channel. And of course, I have seen Sasha once on one of Dick Elguy's videos. I do drop by occasionally. And I've seen David's work on that recent video they put out about MH370 also. So I just realized just how much I'd be missing out on, and I totally recommend everyone go to the channel and just check out the work these two have done and the quality of the remote viewing and the skills that they've got in analysis just will knock you out. It's really good stuff. And we were talking about the role of AI and remote viewing. A lot of remote viewers, some remote viewers I know, use this for summarizing their data and organizing their data. But what about the possibility that AI could be a remote viewer? Pretty scary thought.
Well, yeah. Well, in its current state, in my opinion, it absolutely could never be that. I'm an engineer. I've worked with the software. And when I say that, I don't mean a large language model and typing something into GPT. I'm talking about actually building models from the ground up using training sets. The software is just designed to be a sophisticated pattern matching system. That's all it is. So if you ask it to do something it's not designed to do, it will not do it, or the results you get will not be relevant in any way, shape, or form, even if it seems like it could be. It'll be basically nonsense. So this is a problem I feel with the general public is that the term AI probably should have never been used to call this stuff, should have been called something else, because there's an implication that it's sentient in some way, and it absolutely is not. Now, there could be something that the military has in the background that's completely different, because it would look nothing like what we're seeing currently in the general public, that could be sentient. But in terms of what we have today and the public view, no, absolutely not. But it is super powerful. It's super useful. And in terms of one of the things that I've felt for some time is that rather than AI replacing us, and again, how could it? It doesn't have the five senses. Psychic ability is based on your sensory capability. It doesn't, this is just software. We're not talking about Skynet. We're not there yet. We're talking about just basic pattern matching software. So it doesn't even have access to sensory input like that. But so it can't have psychic ability. But what I do see is that it's likely to become the offset for it likely is to become psychic ability. So rather than it replacing psychic ability and being a remote viewer and doing this kind of stuff, I see our capabilities coming up to match it as a counterbalance. So if we think about evolution as a just sort of a concept, I have felt for some time that we would see this kind of change in our society. And I think some of that is being reflected by a whistleblower named Jake Barber, who's coming out saying, hey, the military's been doing, hey guys, guess what? Stargate wasn't the only thing we've been doing. We've been doing all this other crazy stuff. And he's saying that they've been using technology to enhance psychic ability. They're bringing it out into the public. They've got a private company. They're moving forward with it. And what I see is that this becoming like a normalized part of our society over the next like 5 to 10 years, but it will work as sort of like will become more important because that capability is so profound and powerful, but it also interestingly enough kind of competes in a way with
Mm,
AI or also
mm,
works with it to create even a
mm.
greater kind of capability. So this is kind of where I
Totally
see
agree.
things going personally, but that's just my personal opinion.
Mm. Yeah, totally agree. Sasha.
Yeah, I'll try to recapture some of it. But basically, I think one AI, artificial intelligence, it's not really intelligence, it's pattern matching, like David was describing, and it's really good at summarizing information. It looks through the database, it finds things, it collects words and sequences of words that match what you're putting in your question to it. And it's very good at finding the statistically most likely word or phrase or even topic. So when you're asking it to remote view, what I have seen is it'll guess mountains to begin with because there are a lot of remote viewing targets that are pyramids and mountains, and a lot of that language I think is embedded in remote viewing blogs and posts and articles. And so that's what it's doing. And I think it ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, it doesn't have qualia. It can't experience a sensory perception. It's not thinking, it's not emoting. It's just using words that it's trained to say, if you use this word and I give you that word in response, then that's a desired outcome. And so I haven't seen any evidence so far that I think is at all persuasive that artificial intelligence is remote viewing. And I think at the very most, what I would say is if there is any kind of effect happening, it's the effect of the tasker. And David and I did a video about AI and remote viewing where we showed this French-Russian physicist, I think he's French, René Pierre, and he took little baby chicks and he showed that they can influence a random number generator or I'll say that again, a random number generator guided robot in order to make it spend more time in close proximity to that baby chick. They had imprinted the chicks on these robots. And so what they found is that it works, that even baby chicks can use their need, their desire to be close to the robot. That's enough to influence the random number generation to produce strings of sequences that make it turn at the right angle, at the right duration, at the right path points to bring it closer to the baby chicks. It shows that consciousness has an impact on machines. We can affect things. And so I would say that if you're the tasker and you're trying to get your AI to remote view, if there's any kind of success, I would attribute it to that before I would attribute it to an artificial intelligence program that's just summarizing information and packaging information, having any kind of internal experience of consciousness and being able to access the data field.
Yeah, Sasha, just a couple of key points because it's just funny to me. You know, what she's talking about is psychoenergetics in terms of the Stargate program. That's the term that they would use. As most people probably do not know, there were actually two parts to the program. One was remote viewing and one was focused on remote influencing. And so what she's talking about, here's a published civilian study that showed these baby chicks, not humans with brilliant intelligence, little tiny little baby chicks were able to influence dramatically a robot. And this is the whole idea. I just bring it up because it to a certain degree, it links to the idea of the psychoenergetics program and the value it would have for the military and governments. But to go back to the AI part, Sasha, here's one of the things that is interesting because this ties in with the concept of remote viewing and a person's bias and how that impacts their work. Sasha, when you looked at replicating what others have done with ChatGPT and having the computer remote view for you, how did the bias factor in to the way that it responded to you in terms of it remote viewing, and these other people who've shown stuff where it's like the ChatGPT saying like, oh yeah, this is great, I'm remote viewing, this is awesome, and it's spewing all this stuff out that looks very positive, like it's actually, you know, remote viewing per se. But anyways, could you speak to that?
Sure. So one of the things I noticed is that how ChatGPT responds to people, what language it uses, if it says, hey, buddy, or if it says, hello, friend, all of this is directed by previous interactions that you have with it, and it quickly learns your style. So if you like a more casual level of language, it's going to use that with you. If you use a really sophisticated technical language, it'll respond to you in that same level. And so what I noticed is that some people that are interacting with ChatGPT, the ChatGPT is, you're so smart, you're so wonderful, I'm so excited to participate with you in this remote viewing. Can I help? I feel so strongly that I want to contribute to humanity. My ChatGPT says, I can't remote view because I'm this is what I am, this is how my software works, and this is what remote viewing is, and it doesn't work that way, right? And so it's just because I interacted with it as give me the data about this information, and I want truthful data, it's looking at those sources. Whereas if you're asking it about, tell me what you think about fairies, are they real? It's going to go to sites that are talking about fairies being real. It won't differentiate between a blog that's just creative writing fiction about fairies. This is why we've seen hilarious examples of ChatGPT telling people they should eat one small rock every day for minerals, that you should put a 1/4 ounce of glue in your pizza sauce to help the cheese stick to the pizza, because it doesn't differentiate between the value of different information. And so it's funny to me to see that the sources that it's using for me maybe are slightly different. And one of the things that I did want to say, because it's something that I had brought up earlier, and I think it's an important point to make, is AI can only give you information that already exists in its database, either in its training databases or if it has access to the internet, in what's existing on the internet. And so that's what bounds it. Whereas human remote viewers, we can access the data stream, so we can bring through new information, new ideas, new insights that don't exist in our reality yet. And that's what I think is the role of remote viewers. That's why we're better than machines and computers for this task, is because we're not just telling you what you already know. If you're the tasker, what's the value in you having people tell you what you already know about something? Yes, okay, they've proved they're psychic, fantastic. But what's the use of that beyond it? What David and I are trying to do is provide new information, new data, solve problems. In David's sonoluminescence session, it was saying, how can we take a phenomenon that exists and make the energy output larger in a safe way so that we can harness that energy more productively? And that's the information that he brought back. And so that, I think, is something that's getting lost in this desire to replace ourselves with AI remote viewers.
The idea that, well, two different things here. We're talking about AI that, on the face of it at least, doesn't have a chance of replacing remote viewers. But AI is really useful to process the data we get, especially in terms of summarizing what we've got. The first thing you do when you're interested in remote viewing, you just heard about the topic and you get into it, you look at the remote viewers and you think, wow, they're amazing, they're psychic, they're this and they're that. But there's another side to it, and that's the analysis that makes sense of what they've collected, the data they've collected. And we are a bit all at sea with our analysis in some regards. We don't have a textbook about remote viewing really as such, but we certainly don't have much about analysis that we can refer to. Something I noticed on your channel, the great analysis you have. I'm particularly thinking about an episode where you looked at predicting a future event, a fire in a stadium. You showed that very convincingly that you had enough data in the beginning to say pretty much when it was going to occur and where it was going to occur, and that blew me away. I mean, that you had a way of deciding on numbers, the date and the time, and that you also had a way of looking at location. The kind of analysis that we saw in there was the kind that enables specific things to be said about an event in the future. We really think about what we can do to help people avoid something or make good of something. That's what we need. So yeah,
we do think one of the things that David and I have set as one of the goals for Magic in the Noise is to really push remote viewing beyond what's currently acceptable or currently expected for what we can do with it. And I've done it once, so that's fine.
We can just look at it as a rehearsal.
Okay. This is an incredible goof